Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to welcome you all today at an event organized by the Open Dialogue Foundation as part of Human Dimension, of this year's Human Dimension implementation meeting by OSCE. The event is dedicated to the rule of law in Poland, and in particular political attacks, politically motivated attacks on those whom the current authorities, current Polish authorities consider their opponents. Our organization has been organizing events in the annual OSCE conferences since it was founded back in 2009, if I remember well. And usually we have addressed issues of the political persecution in the post-Soviet area. The situation changed in 2017 when, for the first time, we held an event on Poland. And it was about the conflict between the government, the law and justice government, and civil society organizations. We did not expect it to last so long, although it's obviously not only civil society initiatives who've been attacked over the recent years by the Polish authorities. Since then, the state of the rule of law in Poland has only deteriorated, and the attacks have taken even more drastic forms. Our report on political malicious prosecution by the Polish Prosecutor's Office, which we published at the beginning of the year, is, I believe, a very well documented one. At the moment, we are really concerned with delivering humanitarian aid to Ukraine, although we cannot forget and we cannot ignore the events in our country. Today, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speakers, Judge Dominik Czeszkiewicz of the Themis Judges Association, Piotr Osiecki, asset manager and the founder of Altus Investment Fund, which was once the largest investment fund in Poland, and not only in Poland, in the entire Central Eastern Europe area. And also, last but not least, the activist Jakub Kocjan of Akcja Demokracja. Thank you very much for your presence. Kuba will be moderating our discussion as well. Kuba, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation and possibility to talk today about the situation both in Poland about crisis of rule of law, but what is really important for me for today's session is to show also the personal dimension of the current situation. It is a great honor to have such guests because we all know that the repressions and generally the activity of people connected to Minister of Justice with the General Prosecutor at the same time affects people from various sectors, various environments. Of course, the judges, the attorneys are the most affected, but also people from non-governmental organizations and also the activists, people from business sector can be the target both of the government and the public media. I would like to start with a simple but also difficult question, I think, because we we are talking during the conference, during today's and yesterday's plenary session about the violation, acts of violation of human rights, rule of law in various countries, mostly in post-Soviet countries where heroic nations are fighting for their liberty and personal freedoms. But we meet today in the heart of Europe, in Poland, in European Union, and we are debating the same things. So, why we are now here debating about the situation in a state member of European Union in Poland? Judge.
Thank you. As I said, my name is Dominik Czeszkiewicz. I'm a judge in the district court. In the district court criminal division in Slovakia, I'm a member of the Themis Association, Judges Association. Let me tell you my story shortly, of course. The first question, why are we now here debating about the situation in state member of European Union? I will answer this question at the end of my speech generally. Destroying judiciary, destroying democracy. Let us remember that weakening democracy in Poland weakens the entire Union, European Union. We cannot afford it now during the war, of course. My story shows one of the ways in which authorities can intimidate judges. As I said, I'm a judge. All the court authorities did it in this case where my authorities of my court, well, what they did, it was at least disciplinary talks. Of course not possible to prosecute at present now. So, my story is, it started in January 2017. I issued a decision that held that activists of Committee of Defense of Democracy who were protesting against promoting the candidate of the Law and Justice Party during a ceremony of a historical museum exhibition opening were not guilty of disturbing public order by shouting, making noise, or causing alarm. It was a small offense. It's called small offense, not criminal, but small offense. During the ceremony, Minister of Interior Mariusz Błaszczak, accompanied by his deputy Jarosław Zieliński, is a member of parliament, local member of parliament from my region, from Suwałki region, expressed his hope that local law and justice candidate Anna Maria Andres would become a member of parliament in forthcoming by-election, which was a clear element of parliamentary campaign. It was forbidden in this time. Referring to, among other things, the European Convention of Human Rights, I held that the protesters did not disrupt public order, but merely exercised their right to freedom of expression at a public event. The police appealed the decision. According to media, on 25 March 2017, the Deputy Minister of Justice, Łukasz Piebiak, met with Regional Court Judge Jacek Sobul, who was responsible for examination of the appeal. On 6 April, Judge Sobul overturned the not guilty verdicts and ordered re-examination of the case. The case was re-examined on 29 June 2017. Judge Piotr Osiecki of the district court in my city ruled that, again, that the protesters were not guilty. The police appealed again in October 2017. Judge Sobuk was promoted to the position of the president of regional court in Suwałki. Interestingly, Judge Sobuk, when asked by media, said that he did not know Mr. Piebiak before. I'm judge in Suwałki and I can say, assure, that that wasn't true. They are very good friends. And he said that to media that he, I think that maybe he was ashamed, I don't know. But whatever. On 17 January 2018, I was assigned a criminal case involving interrogation of a minor in the procedure of securing evidence. I set the date of hearing for 26 January according to Article 2 of Internal Rules of Functioning of the Ordinary Courts. Such interrogation should be conducted without undue delay, which means it shall be done within reasonable time. The regulation did not provide for a concrete time limit which depends on the circumstances of the case. Now it is changed. On 26 January, the College of Judges of the Regional Court in Suwałki decided to open disciplinary proceedings against me. The college decided to support the initiative of President of the Court, Sobu, to instigate disciplinary proceedings partially due to the tricky action of President Sobu. During the sitting of the college, Sobol, who was the chairman, described the case concerning interrogation of the minor as a very serious one, namely as a case of a child abduction with the use of firearms, which is a felony with maximum statutory penalty of 15 years of imprisonment. Actually, the case was much less severe and concerned compelling another person to a specific conduct which is endangered by maximum penalty of 2 years of imprisonment. All the time the court's authorities were looking for more it's called hooks on me. In the end, the local disciplinary commissioner charged me with 2 professional misconducts. First, for my initial decision to schedule the interrogation of the minor in the procedure of securing evidence for 26 January, even in spite of the fact that the victim was actually examined on 18 January. And second, for not raising my professional qualifications between 2014 and 2017, which caused overturning of 8 collective sentence in the mentioned period. I was supposed to be first to be tested by the new disciplinary system. That was the, let's say, first case. But this example shows how instrumentally the authority approached the judge. Without looking at anything, they wanted to help me as well as intimidate the other judges. I wasn't the only one in this case, but that case shows how authorities wanted to intimidate other judges. This was the real goal of reform, and it is the real goal of reforms in the courts. Intimidate the judges and protect your judges who are currently unpunished. These are 2 goals, not only prosecute, but help this, let's say, judges could change this. Such as those from the so-called troll farm. I think that you know this troll farm. Finally, after a few weeks, the same commissioner discontinued the proceedings. I don't know, till now I don't know why it ended in that way. Okay, and second point, repression in Poland, exaggeration or harsh everyday reality. Now, in my opinion, only civil society, non-governmental organizations, independent media, and finally independent courts stand in the way of authoritarianism of the current government. That is why the government fights so fiercely all manifestations of independence. You are either with us or against, you are either with us or against us, as Mr. Kaczynski said, support, do not disturb. Okay.
Thank you very much. I have to add one thing, that it was probably one of the first cases of destroying the personally one judge for not for being constant enemy of nation, let's say, as Judge Tuleya for years, but the one particular judge from common court who is attacked by public television, by the government, and by these people from connected to Minister of Justice, only because one particular decision, yes, about the specific decision in particular case. Now I would like to ask Piotr Osiecki, who represents here the business environment and work, about your story, because it is also really important in the context of affecting various branches of life, economic life also, and how the current system can destroy the person.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me a chance to be here. Again, my name is Piotr Osiecki. I'm key shareholder of Altus, formerly TFI, which is asset management company, which at the year 2017-18 was the largest independent asset manager in Central Eastern Europe, with the assets under management amounting to 18 billion zlotys, managing various types of portfolios. One of the biggest independent financial institutions in Poland. And if we talk about rule of law and basically how the current government tackles different spheres of life, it's not only judges, not only media, not only independent NGOs, independent organizations, but also entrepreneurs and private business and basically economic life that is in the hands of private people that is not favorable to the current government and to the ideology of the current government. So I was one of the people that was attacked by the state. I was arrested in the year 2018, August 2018, and then consecutively 2 times later on. I spent 16 months in prison within the period of 2 years. So I was arrested 3 times, the same thing, with the record bail in the history of Polish judiciary system, 108 million Polish zlotys, which amounts roughly to $25 million US. It was 3 times, almost 3 times more than in the Madoff case, although my case has nothing to do with the embezzlement of Mr. Madoff. But yes, I was arrested 3 times for the same thing, and I was arrested for the thing that me acting to the best interest of my funds and my clients, which money I managed, I allegedly caused them damage to the company that bought the shares of another company from my funds. This may sound crazy and impossible, but it's actually the fact that it's like you are selling a car to someone and you want basically to get the highest price possible, and the buyer has to take care of to buy it at the cheapest possible, and your job is to sell it as expensive as possible. It's the case that I was charged with. There was no misuse, no misled, no cheating, nothing. The buyer was a professional buyer listed on the stock exchange. The transaction was approved by reputable companies with the thorough due diligence, both financial and legal, accepted by and disclosing the prospectus by Polish Supervision Committee, Financial Supervision Committee. I mean, everything. Bulletproof case. Nevertheless, I was I was kind of obstacle to the current government, especially because the family of the Prime Minister was involved in this case. There was a big scandal, financial scandal, probably one of the biggest in the history of Polish financial system, called Getback case, and we unfortunately had some business with the Getback company, which amounted to 1.2% of our revenues. But I was perfect scapegoat, as I was a wealthy private individual, and I basically had majority of shares in the privately owned financial institution that currently in this country cannot be owned by a private individual. Basically, there is the economic autarky in Poland right now, especially in the financial industry, and no company from financial sector can be outside of the hands of the state. So they use me as a scapegoat to cover up for sort of their involvement. They, as I said, arrested me 3 times in a row. Judges that were heavily dependent and are still heavily dependent on the government were arresting me while the independent judges were releasing me from the prison. Already it's over 4 years from the first day of the arrest, and nothing happened in my case. I'm charged, I'm not indicted, as basically the case is fake. Yeah, there are a number of cases like this currently that started from the year 2015, from the change of the political change, and I'm obviously 100% positive that at the end of the day this will end up in the right way, provided that we have true rule of law in Poland, which is not the case today. The rule of law in Poland, as of today, is non-existent. I'm a great example of that. There are a number of the abuse and misuse of law in my case, like keeping this huge record bail and at the same time keeping me in prison, as the people coming to my family and suggesting that if I decide from the prison to sell the shares of my company, there will be favorable treatment in my case in prison. It's like racketeering in Russia, basically, or Belarus. Yeah? I never imagined that such cases can happen in the country that is member of the European Union, but it's actually the case, and I'm living example of that. Probably I could talk hours about the work of prosecution, the politicized judges and politically influenced judges, but my case is slightly different than the others because yes, I spent 16 months in prison, where I never ever had any clash, any problem with law, nothing like that. I was a law-abiding citizen, 100%. But I grew up too big, too influential in the financial industry, having business, crossing my business lines with the businesses of state-owned companies, and at some point in time this was not acceptable for the current government and the policy of the having influence over variously all aspects of life, including economic life, which has to be monopolized by the government and state-owned entities.
Thank you very much for sharing your story. My next question was to ask about using this word exaggerated repressions in Poland. Should we use it, or is it exaggeration or harsh everyday reality? I believe that your story replies to this question very well. And what I would like to underline is that this is a story of one individual person. It is the story of chilling effect on whole the sector, for whole the business, for lawyers. Now in Poland you do not need to be a lawyer to face consequences from judiciary system if the interest of the state and especially the governing regime is not the same as yours. I would like now to ask Judge Czeszkiewicz about this situation with repressions, especially in the context of prosecutors, because we all know that judges are in a situation when Constitution states about some guarantees of their independences. And of course this independence is under attack, but in the prosecutor offices the situation is even worse. So if you can develop this topic.
Thank you. A couple of days ago, I attended a meeting with a Russian professor, law professor, and he said to me that in Russia there are almost over 40,000 judges, and only a couple of them are suspended. Like in Poland, only a couple of judges are suspended. Judge Leja, only a couple of them, but it is enough to intimidate other judges to do it. The same situation is with prosecutor's office. That's why prosecutor office plays a paramount role. When we're talking about our judges' recommendation for changes, this is the first point that we should do. A thorough reform of the public prosecutor's office. Now, the more the government restricts the rights and freedoms of citizens, not only judges, of course, all citizens, the more it pursues independent judges and prosecutors, the more it attracts the attention of the European Union institutions and other international organizations. International courts already have an opinion on several reforms of the judiciary. They are already starting to write about prosecutors' office, which is also supposed to be apolitical and effective. Completely unlike now. I have a couple of examples of this verdicts tribunal in Strasbourg. These are cases C/83/19, C/127/19, C/185/19, C/291/19. So, as I said, a thorough reform of the public prosecutor's office. Here also international court noticed that the Polish prosecutor is not fulfilling its role completely. We have an example, one of many examples. It is enough to look at how it pursues those responsible for hating judges, troll farm, yes, and conducts proceedings in which people associated with the authorities may be charged. The draft changes is ready, and we would also have to think about merging the Polish prosecutor office with the European prosecutor's office. You're right. This is the first, in my opinion, the most important change that we should do in close future, I hope. Prosecutor office plays paramount role in deterioration of law in Poland, but independent prosecutor will also play a major role in re-establishing the rule of law and bringing to justice all who broke the law, simply. Thank you.
Thank you. Piotr, I would like to ask you now about how your case could affect other businessmen in Poland. Do you believe that when it comes to investments in Poland, when it comes to business, economic decisions, such cases can impact also other people, and how this chilling effect can result?
Thank you. We have here very comprehensive and interesting to read the report from Open Dialogue Foundation, which I highly recommend for everyone to take a look at. There are a number of cases like mine. Probably mine is one of the most striking because not all the cases end up in people being arrested and put in prison and spend that much and long time in prison. Needless to say that, for example, in Germany, if there is no, if the person is not indicted within 6-month period, the temporary custody, temporary arrest is compulsory, immediately released. Yeah, it's not the case in Poland. Yeah, so you can spend 2 years in prison and you know, without any consequences for the people that are charging you. Obviously, this case is, I mean, to say that such case is intimidating for the business people in Poland or entrepreneurs is very little to say. If you do things, you know, obviously it's very hard and difficult to be advocating in own case, but believe me, I was doing my job in a very right way, using the fiduciary duty approach to my clients. Actually, I sent all documentation. I'm CFA charter holder, a member of CFA Institute, which is a reputable US organization gathering the investment professionals and financial analysts all over the world. And key target of this institution to keep very high ethical and professional standards for its members. So I sent the basically the whole documentation of my case to CFA Professional Conduct Department. They evaluated the case and said there is no problem, there is nothing. So they took no disciplinary action against me. In normal country, normal environment, this would be sufficient enough to drop the case against me. Obviously, this is not the situation in Poland. But getting back to your question, this is devastating for private sector. This is devastating for everyone that is doing any business in Poland. If you can be charged without substantial or just enough background. Needless to say that I was arrested on 31st of August 2018, and the special report of the prepared for the prosecutor's office allegedly supporting charges against me was prepared and presented 1 year after I was arrested, which again shows how baseless and groundless the charges were. And currently this report has been dropped as insufficient and not professional enough to keep charges against me. So basically, currently in Polish environment, prosecutor is deciding on the entrepreneur fate and the basically future of the business. My company, Altus TFI, was worth roughly 1 billion Polish zlotys, which is 250 million US dollars. It's listed on the stock exchange. It was listed on the stock exchange. And we had a number of investors, and obviously, as you can imagine, after I was arrested, the shares dropped 98%. Because I was founder, CEO, and key shareholder. And now we are sort of getting back ground, and we are sort of showing this case to the public, but the damage has been done. And in the, as you can imagine, in the Polish environment, in the environment of Polish courts, it's almost impossible to get back what has been destroyed and damaged. And the damage has been done to me, to my company, to my clients, and we went down from 18 billion zlotys under management to 0 zlotys under management within my company. So if such cases happen, everyone would ask oneself, why do business in Poland at all? Why struggle? Why compete if there is a prosecutor that can present you groundless and baseless charges and destroy your life and your business? Obviously, you know, I will devote my life to win this case, and I will not step back. But probably most of the people that went through the hell of prison in Poland, and not only in Poland, will not be so strong and determined. So the simple answer to your question, what is the effect? It's devastating. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your story. I would like to add that the mechanism of destroying rule of law in Poland is not only about institutions, it is also about people. Because the current regime switched off, firstly, Constitutional Tribunal, then the majority of Supreme Court, then the National Council of Judiciary, which is now in an unconstitutional way elected by Parliament, not by judges. But what is even more important is common attitude, common approach to these changes. We as activists, as non-governmental organizations, were also attacked for organizing protests, for organizing demonstrations, participating in campaigns, even such petty things, let's say, as asking people to call for the offices of member of parliaments was presented as an attempt to stop communication in the country. I also experienced some chilling effect which also affects universities. Last year I graduated from law at Warsaw University, then I participated in recruitment process for being PhD candidate, and of course it is situation not possible to compare to your activities and your repressions which targeted you. But I remember it, and it is really important not only for me, but also for academic teachers, for other students. I was rejected in the second stage of the process with very clear oral justification. You are not appreciating enough pro-freedom reforms of current government of law and justice. It is probably true that I do not appreciate it enough, but I believe that it is important because in the first stage they assessed my papers for being the third person in recruitment, and after this interview I was 31st. So it is the scale of this chilling effect and trying to target people who are not only on public positions, and these, let's say, repressions are not so grave. It is impossible to compare it with judges, justices, attorneys, businessmen, but it is very strong signal which affects people who want to be lawyers, PhD professors at universities. And now the time is very special. We have war on Ukraine, we have invasion of fascist Russia on Ukraine, and some regimes in European Union want to use this special time, this time when we are all thinking about Ukraine and refugees and helping them, to go further with their agenda. I would like to ask Judge Czeszkiewicz about this, how important it is and how dangerous this strategy. And it will be the last question after it from me. After the speech of Judge Czeszkiewicz, I would like to ask you for your questions. Please raise a hand during the speech so I can assess how many people want to share their contribution.
Thank you. When we're talking about intimidations, I'd like to tell you shortly about one of my colleagues, Waldemar Żurek. He's a member of the board of my association. I think he's a record keeper of disciplinary proceedings. He's facing over 20 disciplinary cases. So, back into the war in Ukraine, as a crucial moment for the Polish rule of law, in my opinion, until now the government has used every crisis for propaganda purposes. Until now. It is no different now, just as the pandemic was used to restrict, for example, civil liberties. Now the war is used to destroy the judiciary. I should emphasize that helping refugees is one thing, it's others. But destroying the rule of law and weakening the European Union is the latter. It's a completely different issue. One has nothing to do with the other. The European Union, as I said, already knows that weakening democracy in Poland, weakening of judiciary, is weakening the entire organization. We only have two paths now, either the Union or Russia. Whoever destroys the judiciary in Poland chooses Russia.
Thank you very much. And are there any questions? So, yes, please. And please introduce yourself and organization.
Thanks very much. I'm Josh, also with the Open Society Foundation based in the US. We have a number of partners in Poland and throughout the OSCE region that I work with. Both of the examples you raised, I think if they were heard by lawmakers in Washington or Brussels, should in themselves raise outrage. But a lot of times there's a disconnect between the propaganda that you see from peace and how that resonates with the Polish public. So for either of your cases that you spoke about, how well does your average Polish person understand what that means, what's going on, and the potential effects it would have on them?
Thank you very much for your question. I think it is really important. So, who wants to start?
Thank you. It's a very good question. Probably the level of knowledge and understanding is very low, as you can imagine. These are complicated cases, both because of the, as you said, propaganda and the politicized government influenced media. The judges are perceived as those who have very good financial situation and basically are on the top of the social ladder, not to mention entrepreneurs that are those vicious and evil banksters. And so people, we live in the world and the times where there is so much populism and those so-called social transfers, which are in fact not social transfers. It's like very often buying people's votes for the money and saying, okay, we are giving you money, skip any questions, just support us. What is rule of law after all? I mean, it's like just slogan. So I would say that both our cases, or generally the perception is that it's like marginal vis-a-vis the mainstream. It's difficult, complicated, and again, the propaganda uses the slogans like, if he is not guilty at some point in time in the future, he will be found unguilty. So what's all the mess and fuss about? Yeah. But we know that it doesn't work that way. So I guess that the knowledge is not sufficient enough, and the understanding of those cases, although it's growing. People, more and more people. It's not only our cases. There are a number like this, and I would say that it's that approach to the law became mainstream in Poland. There are actually very few true cases, if you will, and I believe that such meetings and basically people who are brave enough to stand up and talk about this and describe their experiences is something that is needed, and the knowledge is growing. I think so. I hope so, especially in view of the upcoming elections in 1 year from now.
Speaking of propaganda, there is one thing I would like to add, because it's not only about losing freedom, as in Piotr's case, or France, also about judges being suspended, but it's also about our reputation. A year ago I was arrested and spent only 3 weeks in jail. So far I have not been indicted, and the prosecutor's office is pretty inactive when it comes to my case, but I must say it is in great measure about destroying one's image. The prosecutor's office goes hand in hand with the public television and plenty other media outlets controlled by the government directly or indirectly, or those associated with the government, funded by the government. And I think the activists, the judges, private entrepreneurs, all those deemed inconvenient by the authorities would be able to show like hundreds of articles, maybe even thousands, when it comes to those most hated and most famous and this is the scale of the defamation spread by the so-called media environment of the authorities, and I think the most long-lasting consequences will be related to that particular aspect. In my case, in case of the Open Dialogue Foundation, so far, I can't recall how many court disputes we have with the authorities. Usually we are winning. It takes a lot of time, a lot of funds, but still, in case of the defamation, it's not really possible to cancel all those negative consequences, all those scratches on our image and on the image of anyone being targeted by such cruel efforts of the state. And this is the problem, and this is a mechanism which is very much similar to what Russia's authorities are doing on a daily basis, and if you are looking for a benchmark within the European Union, obviously it's Hungary. This is something we have been dealing with.
Thank you very much. I will add on also one thing. When it comes to the effectivity of this propaganda, of course, it is being important, especially maybe not about judges, but about immigration, LGBT people, all other aspects. But what I would like to underline, all polls in Poland, all surveys show very clearly that the majority of Polish people do not support the changes when it comes to judicial institutions, judicial system, and even the voters of Law and Justice Party and all this coalition united right, when have to choose between this so-called reform of judiciary system and, for example, relationship with European Union, access to European funds, the majority of them state that the most important thing for them are relations with European Union, and this is the reason why I believe that it is so important also on international level to support all initiatives to grow, to rise the pressure on all illiberal democracies, let's say, or authoritarian regimes, because it has enormous impact on final decisions, resolutions, because of this social support for European Union as in Poland. Are there any more questions? Yes.
Yes. Hello, I'm Radu. I'm an intern at the Embassy of Romania here in the Republic of Poland, and I have a question regarding the aftermath of the semblance of the disciplinary chamber for judges. Were there any real progress in reinstating the judges that were accused and excluded from the judiciary court after the abolishment of the disciplinary chamber? Was there any real progress in this sense?
No. Generally, the disciplinary chamber only changed its name. It's not now disciplinary chamber, but this is another Supreme Court chamber. I don't remember the name.
Professional responsibility.
Yes. So there are, we are calling them neo-judges, illegal judges are there. So I don't think that situation has changed.
Yes, this chamber is built that way that there are not only no judges there, as it was in disciplinary chamber, but they have majority. So and the chairperson of this chamber. So finally, the result is the same, and generally there is no possible progress with these no judges. It is the clear response from judgments of European Court of Human Rights and European Court of Justice, because all these changes, rebranding, it is only in purpose to get funds from this special fund, Next Generation Fund for Poland, but generally all the activity of both disciplinary chamber and chamber of professional responsibility are connected to the current situation in this, let's say, dialogue between Brussels and Polish government, suspending one judge, unsuspending one judge. Everything is connected only with the situation in the governing camp. So their decisions are not as important, because one day disciplinary chamber unsuspended judge, and he could go to the court, but he cannot be the judge in these criminal cases, which is his profession. So eventually, in the very end, it is all political decision of the governing camp. No progress at all. Thank you very much for the questions.
Excuse me, and we should add that this chamber was created by the president of Poland.
Yeah, the same president who was the author of this bills, which was by European Court of Justice stated as contrary to European law. Okay, I believe that it is time for final words from our guests about vision of future.
Vision of future, I can assure you that we judges in my association are thinking about future, and we have a couple of recommendations. So shortly, as I said, first, reform of the public prosecutor's office. This is the first, I think, the one of the most important changes that we're thinking about. Second, constitutional reform of the constitutional tribunal. We have projects ready, IG Battery Foundation. Point three, changing the way of educating future judges and prosecutors. This is a very important thing that it's not maybe so popular in media, but in my opinion, this is very important. Changing of way of educating future judges and prosecutors by disconnecting national school from the influence of politicians. Because now the chief of this national school, the president of the school is a man from the Ministry of Justice, so politician. So we can say that politicians are responsible for educating future judges and prosecutors now in Poland. Four, depolitization of National Council of the Judiciary. Now, in my opinion, what is very important, opinion of my association, assessors in general will not be included in the verification, because we're thinking about verification of all the verdicts of these so-called neo-judges. Five, the initiation of legal disciplinary proceedings against illegal court presidents and others who have violated the judicial oath and contributed to the politicization of the courts. And sixth, at the same time, the new government should digitize courts, simplify and speed up court procedures, which may be assisted by unblocked funds like the European Union or Norwegian funds, which we have blocked now.
Thank you very much. The last word from Piotr.
I guess those cases speak for themselves, so no need to elaborate on that. I just think that it's important to keep on bringing those voices and discuss it, even if it's on and on and on, and repeating the cases a number of times. I guess any government, and this government finally at the end of the day has to focus and listen to the voices from outside. Thanks God we are a member of the European Union. Hopefully this will stay like that in the future. But obviously your support and your voice from outside is required, as it's quite difficult for us just internally here to be enough persuasive to get the things done. It's important to challenge the government and especially the judiciary system, and even if it's uphill struggle, we need to keep on repeating rule of law in Poland, rule of law in Poland. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jakub Kocjan and businessman Piotr Osiecki for participation, sharing your stories in today's panel. Thank you very much to everyone who devoted time for hearing about situation in Poland, and we all hope that you will be also some ambassadors of our case also in your countries, because we know it very well after more than 5 years of struggling in defense of courts, but generally 7 years in defense of all the system, that the international support is really high to appreciate too much. So thank you very much for your participation and for invitation of me, Bartosz.
Thank you very much. It was our pleasure to host you today. Should you have any further questions, you can reach out to us at any time. We will not give in, we will not give up, and in my view it is our duty to struggle, to fight for courts, fight in the media, and of course, as Kuba has just said, any European and international support you may provide will be very much appreciated. Thank you very much.